Longest day of the year.
You get the service you pay for, so the public would get a better service.
No action today. I'll
Okay.
open the topic for you, just to say you got it. It took us a long time to, well, you see, we had a complete package.
Create some space here.
I appreciate the comments.
Yeah. Like a crowded spot. Yeah, that's a list of inaccuracies. Great day, huh? Just doesn't get much, you even lost your tan, you still look like you rolled out of Florida. I'm headed to New York tomorrow. It's like 90 degrees and 100% humidity, yeah. I'm bringing a t-shirt and a pair of shorts, that's it for the 5 days. I got a little business, I'm going by myself. Okay, so
Yes.
I'll be there for 5 days.
Showtime, huh?
You don't know how I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. That's true.
Yeah, I was broke down in Southern Regret up here. Yeah, I didn't make it. For a couple of
Okay, let's get started with this Pork of Shelton Commission meeting for the 21st of June, 2011. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
15 minutes of public comment pertaining to the agenda. Items pertaining to the agenda. Anybody? We'll move on to the adoption of the agenda. Any changes to the agenda from what was published today as opposed to yesterday? You seen the one for today?
The one we have right now, yes.
Yes. Any changes to that?
I have not.
Mr. Chairman, I do have an additional change. I've consulted with Commissioner Miles. We do have the executive session as per his request. I have 2 additional items for potential litigation that will also be discussed in the executive session.
Under I.
Under I, correct.
Got it, thank you. Okay, we'll assume adoption of the agenda with no changes from the published agenda. The meeting minutes, approval of the meeting minutes for the 7th of June and the 14th of June.
I reviewed them, I got no comments. It's fine.
I have none.
We'll assume adoption of those meetings, minutes from both of those meetings with no changes. Check control report.
Check control report. Checks number 22519 through 22563 in the amount of $42,972.50 have been reviewed by myself, our finance manager, and our CPA, and I find everything to be in good order.
Comments? We'll accept the check control report as presented. Brings us down to the action items, the public records policy. This item comes to us from our last regular meeting when we asked the court's attorney to look into the subject and maybe update us on our current policy.
Chairman Hupp, at your last regularly scheduled meeting, I told you I'd make an effort to try and have that ready for your next regular meeting. I didn't think it would be, it is, and we've done a lot of work in compiling that. As you can see, what we've provided to the board and to staff for their comment is a 4-page letter outlining the issues and how we came up with the documents that were enclosed for you. So we went through the analysis, and then we provided a proposed resolution for the Port of Shelton that would adopt a public records policy that's consistent with the statute that covers things like the index, appointing a public records receipt person, identifying the rules and the forms. And in addition to your resolution, it's rather lengthy but needs to be pursuant to the statute, then we adopted a set of proposed rules that you would consider and also adopt at the same time. Those are Public Records Act rules, and they include policy, office hours, the public records officer, the index again, copying, inspection, protection. Spent a fair amount of time on that. We reviewed other ports, we reviewed also other cities, and fortunately, unfortunately, because the port didn't have one, we were able to go get the best of the best and see how people have modified them over the years, and we've really got some good current accurate information in terms of how to meet these needs. And then finally, we've proposed a revised request form. And you may recall that Commissioner Miles brought this up, I think even the meeting prior to that one, I know he's discussed it with me, is it was a little confusing or ambiguous, so we've created a new public records request form that's more detailed and has more options, whether you want to be called and then come pick it up in person, whether you want it mailed to you, postal service, whether you want to make an appointment to review it, whether you want to make copies. So we really created a form, hopefully that's much user-friendly to the public, and it'll make the staff's job easier as well. It also has forms at the bottom where you keep track of when it was received, whether you forwarded it to the port attorney, whether the request was accepted, denied, when, copies, amounts, fees. So hopefully this will meet your needs. It's pretty comprehensive. I've had a very few minor comments from staff, and then Commissioner Miles had a comment he passed on today. So if you can get comments to me in the next week or so, we could have something ready for your next regularly scheduled meeting in July.
Good piece of work. I really appreciate the effort that went into it and the expeditious manner in which it was brought together. That's a nice piece of work.
Except it took me 2 days to get through it all.
I knew that was coming.
But it's well done.
So any further discussion on it?
I don't think we need a discussion, just
we'll
taking
leave it
comments
open
at this
for,
point. I think Commissioner Miles can provide me, or I can make a copy of his. He's identified 2 specific issues he would like to be considered. I can bring those back to the board, and then we'll discuss those prior to adoption.
Okay, we'll just leave the subject open for, I mean, there's no action intended.
No action intended
today.
no.
We'll put it on the agenda for 5th of July and expect to take action on it. And we'll have additional input on it between now and then, I assume. Okay. Fair sponsorship.
Commissioners, obviously, this year's 2011 area fair is set for the end of July. We've received a request, if you will, from Northwest event organizer, John and Rachel Hansen, if we would consider sponsoring again the fair as we did last year. It's a $5,000 gold sponsorship package. It basically puts the Port of Shelton's name on virtually all marketing materials, posters, website, banners, ads, etc., all recognition on radio spots, etc. And probably the most important thing that I've actually appreciated in what they did for us last year is they are doing, I call it a tab, if you want to call it a newspaper, if you will, but inside is a full-page ad and sponsorship, again, supporting the fair, i.e. the Port of Shelton. This, by the way, is mailed to 35,000 households. So from my point of view, I think it's well worth the money, and it gets our name out and does what we want in the community. So I'm recommending that the commission pass and approve the sponsorship again as we did last year.
It would be appropriate to entertain a motion to participate in the sponsorship of the fair. If you
So
care.
moved.
Moved. Second.
Second. Moved and seconded. Discussion.
Looks like a good thing to me.
Well, I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to both market the port and support the fair, so. Any other comments? Call for the question. Those in favor of the $5,000 sponsorship for the fair this year signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Unanimous.
Staff comments.
Do have one item for you, Commissioners. If you recall our wonderful conversation we had with the Dodge project, there was something in the background that we were delaying, and I just got a call from Charlie Boutros the other day, and it looks like we're back active again, and that is the relocation of the Capitol Hill Road. And if I may, Commissioner Miles, I'm just gonna kind of go over your shoulder. Capitol Hill, come on, don't, okay, is it well working or not?
You're out of range.
Am I?
You got it for a second there, kind of glimmered for a minute.
Yeah. Oh, there it is, Jack. I got it back again.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, the current Chapel Hill Road flows right down through here. Yeah, let's see if we can get that. Basically works its way right on down through and then comes right through Mankey property, if you will. Continues on down through here and then works its way south. The road that was negotiated with the city and the county, I should say the county and all the property owners, was to bring that road, instead of working its way back up over here, is to come straight on up and cross over onto port property and continue here, makes a 90-degree turn to the left, and then another 90-degree turn to the north, and then works its way on out and up, not Production Road, I'm trying to remember the name of that, whatever they call it. Anyway, our main road right by Mason County, the ball fields, if you will. And the first week in July, they will finish doing the chip seal to that. That's already been prepaid. So they're gonna put 2 more coats onto that, and then we will have for you some manner of resolution and or the final agreement to sign off on, and that will then transfer access to that road, or shall transfer that road ownership to the county, and that will then be open to the public probably by the 1st or middle of August, as a guess.
So it's deeded to the county.
Right.
Goes immediately to them for maintenance and relocates Capitol Hill Road. And this was an agreement that was put together at least 5 years ago.
At
Or
least-
when did that come together?
It's only been about 3 years.
4 years, 3 years ago?
Seems like before my time though. So.
Okay, good.
Anyway, we had postponed that, as you know, for the Dodge project, and the Dodge was gonna try to reroute that road around, et cetera, when that failed. And of course, we still left the road in place, and now it's being finished off at this point, so.
Yeah.
That'll come anywhere.
Any other staff comments? Public comments? You're always first.
I'll wait.
I guess you're gonna be first.
Thank you, Commissioners. Tom Davis, 170 West Bushy Road. I guess I'm left to point out the elephant in the room. As we know, Teresa Rebo, employee of the port property manager, was terminated by the port on Monday. And it would seem, from the public's perspective, that there might have been a better way to handle this. My understanding is that Teresa saw some port behavior by some individuals, which she took objection to, and which she had the courage to stand up and speak out. My understanding is that her initial letter was to the commissioners, and in the hopes that this situation would be rectified, but evidently it wasn't. From the public's perspective, again, what you see is a valued employee, someone who the port seemed to value and seemed to appreciate in terms of her employee evaluations, and in terms of giving her a raise for job well done and so on. And then soon after speaking out, she is fired. You can't help but wonder if there wasn't another way to do this, whether or not the investigation was rushed, whether or not all the people concerned could have sat in a room to discuss this, Sometimes it gets a little hot, sometimes it gets a little ugly. But that's the job of the port. You guys are public officials and you know what the heat is like. And what you have is one of your own speaking out with no history and no axe to grind. And it would seem to me that there would be several avenues that would have opened up prior to her dismissal. So that's what it looks like from the public standpoint, and I think you ought to know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith,
I'd like to make a comment.
you identify yourself.
I will do so.
Podium. Give us your address.
My name is John Smith. I'm a Skokomish Valley resident. You can put my address down as P.O. Box 1711, Shelton, Washington. I have a question. You may not feel comfortable answering it right now, but I would like an answer to it, and I'd like the public to have an answer to it with respect to Ms. Rebo. It's my understanding that the individuals that you've decided to lease the fairgrounds to, that's been discussed earlier, one of them contacted her while she was still an employee and severely abused her and used profanity over the phone. And you may be in possession of some email to this effect, but I want to know whether that was considered when she was fired. And I'd like to know whether you're, as commissioners who are responsible for the actions of Mr. Dobson, aware of the particular language that was used and directed at one of your employees. It's intolerable, and I'd like the public to know about it. I could become more explicit, but maybe I'll post that on my website, because I don't care to use the obscenities that were used in that phone conversation your employee here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Hansen.
John Hansen, 213 Stockbury Road, Shelton. Being I've been identified as a stand-up kind of guy, I want to kind of clarify a couple of things if I can. Mr. Davis brought up this letter that was given to the commissioners. The interesting thing was it hit the public and the websites when it was still in possession of commissioners. Yet no one brings out who brought all this stuff out to the forefront of the public before it was actually a closed deal. Maybe Mr. Davis could fill us in on how he found out the district attorney even had the letter. He also makes a lot of references that everything he's standing for, the websites that they're posting stuff on, is for the people. Not the people that we know. When people are up here making statements representing the people, they should represent the people they're with, the group or the section of the community that they're supporting, or speaking for. As far as Mr. Smith's stuff, I'll let that get sorted out later. But it could be brought out, I'm not worried about it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Patricia Vanderhay, 567 East Nicholson Road, Shelton. At the June 7th, 2011 port meeting, a remark was made that a certain group of people are trying to destroy the port. There's no need for any group to try to destroy the port, because the powers that be, those in charge of the port, are doing a very thorough job of making that happen. Our concerns about the port, the way the port is being run, considered trying to destroy it. Some of these concerns are the lack of transparency and openness in conducting business, the secretiveness about projects and costs of all the legal fees brought on by the port itself. The port is not a fiefdom in medieval Europe. The public expects accountability. Tax money is being used. The taxpayers are paying the legal bills. There are questionable actions taken without public input. Then there are things like the poor stewardship of Johns Prairie property. Little or no oversight is given to how the leased property was used, how the contamination was, why it was allowed. That area is extremely contaminated and still has not been cleaned up yet. The allowance of the Sea Alaska subsidiary, whatever the name it was being called at the time, how did it get so far behind in its rent? The lawsuits against the city of Shelton concerning the rezoning of Hall's project, the whole Adage fiasco. None of these things inspire confidence. So it would behoove the port to look into its own actions for the negative reactions they are getting from the public.
I'm going to respond to a couple of the statements that were made there. There was a great deal of inaccuracy in a number of things that you just related to. And I would invite you to have an appointment with the executive director, one-on-one, and get straight on a lot of the stuff that is not straight.
Like what?
Well, your accusation that that there was a great deal of contamination at Johns Prairie area is not accurate.
That area is not contaminated, you're saying?
No.
No.
Oh, so that Brownsfield report was untrue.
Rather than us stand here and bounce this back and forth, I would invite you to.
Why can't it be public?
It is, and I would just say.
It is absolute public, it is absolutely public.
Well, I'll be happy to do it, and I'll bring all the information that I've accumulated over the last year.
He'll be more than happy to have a meeting with you on any of those subjects.
And then I would make a statement at the following port meeting.
I think that would be beneficial for everybody. Anybody else?
Just a quick question, kind of follow up on hers. Don't you have a large fuel tank near the entrance to the port where trucks come in and get fuel? Does that comply with current state law? Is it double walled, or is that still an out of compliance of below ground fuel tank that's been there for a long time? Do you happen to know?
As far as I know.
That
it's permitted.
installation has been legally permitted for as long as I've been in Shelton.
But, yeah, I think it's very old, but you can't grandfather in things that
All I'm saying is that.
affect public health and safety. So that's why all the gas stations had to dig up their tanks. Why hasn't the port dug that tank up? and
It's not a
replaced it?
port tank.
It's not a port
And
tank.
this man operates a business over there that's legally licensed.
Follows county regulations.
Just want to know if it's a double walled tank, that's all.
Check with the county.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll close the public comment portion of the meeting. And go to commissioners' comments.
You have
Thinking.
I'll start. I just need something to be clarified or corrected from last week's paper that mentioned that I had advised Teresa Rebo how to file her initial complaint. And that to me was accusatory in nature, because the report says that after she filed her complaint, I helped her file the whistleblower complaint, which was afterwards. So I'd like to make that as a correction, because I got a lot of calls.
You can talk to my editor if you'd like to.
That's fine. I just wanted you to be aware of that. Received a lot of phone calls on that, and I wanted it to be retracted.
You can talk to my editor in the morning.
That's fine. Thank you. That's all I have.
I'd like to correct you, Mr. Davis. Ms. Rebo was not terminated by this commission. She was terminated by her boss, and for cause. The charges were investigated by outside counsel. They were unfounded charges. The rhetoric could not stop. This commission has no business interfering in port staff problems. Mr. Dobson is responsible for hiring, maintaining, or dismissal of all staff employees. I'm not to interfere in his job. If he screws it up, then he talks to us. You stand corrected, sir.
Anything else? I don't have any comments. We'll take 5 minutes to clear the room. We'll adjourn into executive session for how long?
We have 2 scheduled.
I have 2 items as well. Mine will probably take 10 minutes and maybe 20 minutes, so I'll need half an hour. Commissioner Miles has 2 items, and I would probably think it would take a half an hour. So I think if we went to executive session at 2:30 and shot for 3:30, we'd probably be pretty close.
Okay,
Sounds good.
we're adjourned from regular session. We'll